Hi, I'm Matthew McCabe. Welcome to Miracle Voices. Each episode, we will be delving into stories of forgiveness, healing, and transformation that have come about from integrating the principles of the book, A Course in Miracles. If you want to learn more about A Course in Miracles, visit www.acim.org. If you'd like to visit the Miracle Voices site, please go to www.miraclevoices.org. If you feel inspired to make a love offering, please visit us at miraclevoices.org/donate. All donations go to support the work of the Foundation for Inner Peace, the publisher of A Course in Miracles. Now here's your program. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of Miracle Voices. I am here with my co-host, Tam Morgan, and I am Matt McCabe. We have a special guest today. Before we get into that, Tam, how you doing?
I'll just say, yay.
Okay.
That's how I'm doing. Yay. I'm ready to go.
Good.
How are you doing?
I'm doing good, too.
Yay. See? Yay. Good.
And our guest today is Jack Rome. Jack, welcome to Miracle Voices.
Thank you so much. So glad to be here. I've listened to some of your episodes and really enjoyed it. So I'm really grateful to just be part of our conversation here today.
God, epic sounds like we're having fits or something.
What?
Down, you're having an episode.
Oh, right. Yes.
I kind of like it.
Yeah.
Our episodes. It's a good way to put it. Okay, thank you.
It's never a positive connotation, though, right? It's like a hysterical episode or something.
But it is now.
Yeah.
Wait, I shouldn't say that. Jack, is it a positive connotation for our...
I would say, as I've listened to your episodes, witnessed your episodes, and tried to be as present as I can during your episodes, they're joyful. I would say joyful episodes.
Oh, yay!
Wonderful stories, inspiring to hear of students, going through what they're going through. It's wonderful. So yeah, I would say joyful is my word, my connotation for it.
Thank you. They are episodic, though. It's true. They can be deeply challenging episodes. So. Anyway, well, let's start and hear yours, Matt.
Jack, where are you on the blue dot right now? Where are you sitting?
Yes. I am in Arlington, Virginia, just over across the Potomac River from DC. So basically DC when I'm talking to people that live far away, but technically it's Roslyn, which is in Arlington, Virginia.
Okay.
Yep.
And Jack, we'd like to start with, how did A Course in Miracles come into your life?
Yeah, great story. I was thinking about this and sort of reflecting a little bit, and I think probably it's the case for a lot of people, but being one form of the universal course, it came into my life, when I think back at a much younger age than when I found it in form. But when I found our wonderful blue book in form, it was in 2022. So only less than 3 years ago, it'll be 3 years, I think, in August. So, I had been on a sort of lifelong, I guess, spiritual journey, starting with overcoming separation anxiety and using mindfulness and, things indebted to Buddhist practice, to overcome, like being able to fall asleep by myself at night when I was 10. And then, I sort of went through all of the identity crises of being a teenager and in the 20s too. I'm 31 now. And then eventually after college, I sort of had this opportunity to slow down. And 4 years after I graduated college, COVID happened. And that was like, okay, if it's time to deepen, now's the time. And so sure enough, without me realizing it, it was time to deepen. And I originally came across Be Here Now by Ram Dass after having some psychedelic experiences and then being like, wait, this guy just left his whole life after what happened? And so that really opened me up to, you could call the spiritual dimension, I guess, something like that. And a bunch of readings, practices, and retreat types experiences later, in 2022, I was reading one of David R. Hawkins's books. Actually, I was listening to it on audiobook. I think it was probably just the first one that I came across by him, which is Letting Go, which I think is one of his more popular ones.
Yes, that's a great one.
Yeah, but I've gone through all of them now because they build on each other, and but Letting Go was definitely sort of this seminal summary moment from all of his texts, and in it he talked about A Course in Miracles, and I was like, huh. And up until that point, I grew up Jewish, and an emphasis on the ish part, Jewish, but I didn't have that much exposure to like Christian terminology other than in Judaism. It kind of like, let's steer clear because that's not really true or whatever. So I naturally had some resistance to it, but not that much experience with the terminology. And so a year before I found the course, I was engaged in sort of different teachings. There's this one teacher in particular, his name's Neville Goddard, that I want to say the 30s, 40s, 50s, maybe the 1950s, he was active.
Yeah. Awareness was his big book, right?
Yes. Yeah. And so he was a wonderful teacher for me because even though now I don't spend that much time with him nowadays, it just opened me up to a mystical interpretation of Christian teachings. And so it was my first step in overcoming resistance that I might have had. But when I saw A Course in Miracles and was hearing David R. Hawkins talk about it, and then of course, my the algorithm on my social media starts feeding me things related to it, I'm like, oh, I feel like I would have a lot of resistance to this. But at that point, I was searching for the areas, especially in spiritual practice, where there's resistance, because I knew that was like the gold mine, in terms of learning the lessons I'm here to learn. So sure enough, I got the audiobook not long, maybe a week after I heard David R. Hawkins talking about it in the audiobook from him. And I listened to the text on long, long walks. I would go on walks for 3-4 hours, 5 hours at a time. It was almost like walking was my full-time job. But as I was walking and looking out at this sort of dreamy world, I was listening to the course, and I was listening to the teachings, and I was kind of bringing to it, what I had started to bring to all of spiritual teachings that I came across at sort of Ram Dass's direction, I would say, which is, how is this true? So I may experience all this resistance to it, I may have all this conditioning, but how is this true? And what would make this, what is being said right now, and as accurate as possible description of what is actually true. And sure enough, that can open up pretty much any teaching, but certainly a teaching like A Course in Miracles. And so, yeah, I just lived with the book sort of in that way with my first encounter for maybe it took me, I want to say like 2, maybe 3 months of listening to it, most days. And then after that, I said, okay, well, clearly the next step is I got to get the physical book and go through these daily lessons. And sure enough, I did those daily lessons. And then at the end of those daily lessons, when I was just about to start reading the manual for teachers, I sought out a way to embody this a little bit in form. And that's when I started doing some volunteering for the Foundation for Inner Peace. And it was during that time when I was reading the manual for teachers after I had done my first year of daily workbook lessons that I then said, okay, I feel like I'm ready to be of service in form to the foundation. But yeah, that's kind of how it went. It was those really long walks after I had just moved to Arlington, actually. It was sort of like I had just moved to Arlington. I was walking around, exploring this area, walking along the Potomac River, things like that, and listening to the course. And it was like, oh, here we go. Like, in some ways, it was a little bit of like, I had been seeking a text that I could live with for the rest of my life, in this incarnation, in this form, however we want to think about it. And as I was listening to the course, I was like, oh, all this stuff has led me to here, and I'm so grateful for all of it. And I go back to it. The Tao Te Ching in particular pairs so nicely with the course, I would say, at least for me. But this was a text that I knew I could keep coming back to every single day for the rest of this life. And that felt like, oh, I found not the home, but a home for my practice. And that has meant so much to me as someone who's, I'm 31 years old. I'm in terms of conscious spiritual practice, if we want to even think of it that way, I'm only like 5 years into that. Even though I had been kind of benefiting from teachings growing up, dealing with mental health issues. So, I'm just so grateful that I've come across it, and so grateful that there was already such a big community, a deep community, a resonant community that I could find myself a part of. And whether it's being of service or talking to the both of you or however, that it meets me, as I'm sure so many course students say, it meets me wherever I am at any time of any day, of any moment. And I'm so deeply appreciative for that.
Well said.
Yeah. Very. Thank you.
And Jack, did you notice your life changing at all when you started to immerse yourself in the course principles?
Yes. It's always so interesting. Like when I've listened to y'all's episodes, your previous podcast, with guests, and they answer this question. I find it so interesting because I think a lot of it also has to do with like what you bring, where you're at when you come to the course. And I think for me, I definitely felt profound shifts, but it wasn't like a profound shift like I was going to the left and then the course brought me to the right. I was already going in that direction. And I think that's probably not that strange. It feels like that's been the case when I talk to others. But what happened was, whether we want to call it a shift or a melting in, I love that it's not a breaking out, but a melting in. That's what it felt like for me. Melting in is the best way to describe it. I felt like I was able to even to sort of embody and in sort of like melt into this relaxed confidence that sort of like I'm on the right track. We are on the right track. I have teachings that can support me when I'm not on the right track. I have this sort of GPS taking me to where I need to go, but it's not a throw my hands up and like have to resign myself to one teaching as opposed to another in order for it to support me. It was like, no, this is incredibly practical. This is mystical in the deepest sense, where it's about experiencing God firsthand. And that, like I said, like I had been encountering that. I probably would have been able to articulate that before I found the course, but there's a certain melted in, relaxed confidence that I had only felt at certain moments of my life that were a mixture of euphoric and joyful. That's, were total grace. But this book, it's like I was able and am able to like stabilize that experience of gratitude and joy and peace, really. I mean, and it makes certain things so simple. Like, is it love or is it fear? And it's like that can illuminate what needs to be illuminated and dispel what needs to be dispelled. So it really clarified and refined not just my practice, but the way in which I engage in the world of form with like I said, sort of this relaxed confidence, like I need do nothing, but also recognizing that while I need do nothing, things will seem to be done, and that's great, and that's fine. So I would describe it that way. It's not necessarily like I turned to another direction, but I melted into a knowingness even more deeply in a way that could meet me wherever I was. I didn't have to escape something in form in order to recognize the truth of who I am, that I think is so tempting to do when things are uncomfortable. But instead, the opposite, to go more deeply with more willingness, engage more fully, to be able to live out the truth that these teachings are pointing to.
I love that melted in. I feel like it might be foreshadowing of your comfort food question, but don't answer that.
Yeah, you might be right. You
That
might be
too.
right.
Like a nice, yummy, melting ice cream.
We're so
Boy, we don't want
distractible,
to
Jack. We're
spoil
like
it.
2-year-olds. We're
I know, we're really bad about
cats
that.
looking at a laser pointer or something.
No, but it's also just a wonderful symbol for deepening.
Mm.
You know, it's not going somewhere outside yourself or bringing something else, as you said, from a different direction, than putting you in this direction. It's keeping you on course.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I love the word for it. It has its course, and you can go off course, but you through suffering usually it usually brings you back into an alignment that does indeed feel like you're home, or you're melting into a really comfy chair or couch that's yours. It's not something unfamiliar.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
And Jack, do you have a forgiveness story you'd like to share?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, this one, I'm so grateful I get to share about this, but yeah, certainly. So I do want to offer a little context, but then tell like the story in terms of like a moment and how that led me to sort of the path to forgiveness, you might say. So when I was 15 years old, and I'm 31 now, so about half of my life ago, I was in a group of friends and we all skateboarded together, and um, we all decided, let's make music together. Let's be a rap group. Like let's be like a rap group like the Wu-Tang Clan, like Run DMC, like one of those groups where we walk around the high school and it's undeniable like that we have talent and we perform and we're making an impact with what we make in our music. And I remember writing my first uh, sort of verse, and it was absolutely horrible in terms of I had no sense of timing. So it was like I was just saying words while music played. And I remember my friend having me rip it up, and or either it was like I felt so ashamed that I ripped it up, something like that. And nevertheless, I said, okay, I'm going to be the best at this, better than all of these people that I'm doing this with, because I feel like I have to redeem the fact that I had no sense of how to do this. And so, long story short, that turned into a long journey of wanting to be not just like a rap musician, but a performer, an influencer, a famous person, someone who's making a big impact, someone who is loved just as much as has the opportunity to spread positivity and basically be famous and not just for money or material things, but for recognition, to be seen as this, like, oh yeah, we saw you wrong when you were younger and didn't know what you were doing, now you really know. And I actually did have opportunities to do that through my music career as a musician. um but there was a moment, and this is kind of the moment I want to point to, where I I was realizing that I was actually absolutely miserable in this pursuit of basically a promise I made, a commitment I made to myself, to a younger version of myself. And the way I would put it now is like the ego had me, um, told me that if I just do this thing, which is get famous and keep moving the goalposts, I would get everything I ever wanted. And what that would be is I would be enough. That then I would be enough. And classic, seek but never find. And that continued for a long time. It really continued, and I was punishing myself when I wasn't reaching something that I didn't even really could articulate what I was trying to reach. Like, was it to make a full-time income from music? Was it to go on tour? Was it to play a big show? Some of those things I did accomplish, but it was never enough. Um, and so there was one time at sort of it wasn't the end of this kind of journey. I would say the end of this part of the journey where I was just continued punishment toward myself for not achieving things that I thought I was supposed to achieve. But it was definitely a turning point, which is I had a music video shoot in Philadelphia. So I was driving up from, where I was living, basically Washington, D.C. in Maryland, out just outside of it. And I had to wake up at, like 4:30 or so in the morning to go pick up the person who's going to take photos. And then we drove up to Philadelphia to shoot this video, and we shot the video, and that was a blast. The engaging in collaborative creativity is a blast. And then we got dinner there, and then I drove us back, and I got home probably around midnight, I want to say, maybe 11:30 p.m. And I remember just sitting there on my bed after I had, and I didn't unpack anything. And I typically unpack as soon as I get back. I like to be settled as much as possible. But I was just sitting there on my bed, and I was sitting up with my phone like on my knee, because I think I set an alarm because I didn't want to fall asleep sitting up or something. And all of a sudden I wake up, and my mom has come in, and she's like, "Jack, you got to see this photo I just took of you." And she took a photo of me, and I was sitting up, like I was sitting just on my bed and kind of hunched to the left, and I was asleep. And I saw that photo, and like she thought it was so funny. And a part of me, like, I totally get why it's funny. Like, who falls asleep like that at like 22 years old? Like, what is going on? But to me, that was like, it was showing me, this is what you've been doing to yourself. And like, this is what you've been doing to the body. This is what you've been doing to your mind in pursuit of such an illusory, always goalpost moving goal. And so I felt shame for having gotten to that point, for having kind of been exposed for the way I was punishing myself, the lack of care. And there were so many other stories like that, but there's something that really touched me there. And I remember that planted the seed in me of like, and classic course speak, of like, there must be a better way. But for me, it's like, there must be a better way, ... right? With like a question at the end. Because I really didn't know. I mean, this was before I had more of a conscious spiritual practice and came to see, yes, don't worry, Jack, there is a better way. But it was really an important turning point. And with the 5 to, at this point now, almost 10 years after that moment, with other moments where I would be reminded of that, reminded of what has been going on under the ego's direction and care. This is what happens. And going through that trial and error, I then, especially using like course terminology and references to be able to understand it now, I slowly but surely let go of that. And at a certain point, I remember articulating like to some of my best friends and like my parents or something like this, which was like, I know I made this promise to myself at like 15, 16 years old that I'm never going to give up, but I want to experience life joyfully and lovingly. Like and so at the time it felt like this is a betrayal. Like this is a betrayal of myself. I'm betraying who I think I am in order to reach, or not even reach, I mean, in a sense, melt into something more loving and more true. But I didn't know what that was, because for so long, I mean, this is a classic, 20-something experiences, like a breaking down of who they think they're supposed to be. And so I said, well, you know what? I'm just going to go through what my ego is saying is betrayal and give up, and I'll figure it out later, because I can't keep doing this to myself. I can't keep doing this to the people around me. It was making me an anxious, stressed, incredibly depressed person at times. I would totally burn out. And it was really just, such a nightmare. It was the unhappiest of dreams in the sense of in my own mind, in my own thoughts. And so at a certain point, especially because COVID kind of gave me this retreat time to really reflect, to give up. And as I would learn later, like there's a way in which we can understand giving up as not giving up as in failure, but actually giving it up to the Holy Spirit, we might say, giving it up to a more loving part of myself, saying, I can't do this anymore. Can you handle this for me? And sure enough, like that was the step to sort of willingness, and to be able to not just forgive this really harmful story, but at this point now, as I'm speaking to both of you now, forgive what I thought was a betrayal, because that ultimately, that was what was underneath the surface of like, okay, finally, like I'm taking care of my body, my mind, I'm getting enough sleep, I'm doing all the things that if I listen to the Holy Spirit, it's like, yeah, just go to sleep. You don't have to do 3 hours more of work and work to 3 a.m. Just like melt in, just relax. That was great, but I hadn't forgiven myself, hadn't forgiven this self-concept of making it, quote unquote, making it, whatever that means. And for this betrayal. So it's sort of like, how do I face that 15-year-old version of me and say, Jack, I'm sorry, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do what you told me I have to do. I failed you. That felt, that I feel like is such a, at least for me, a brilliant instantiation in my experience of the symbol of this grief of having, of the betrayal, and that it represents a deeper grief and betrayal that I think I did, the sin I think I committed by separating from God, that we did. And so I could go back into those moments with myself and say now instead, and through the lens of forgiveness, say, Jack, listen, to 15-year-old Jack, listen, I'm so grateful that you're so determined and want so badly to master this. And I know that you think it looks like this form and this form. And I promise you, the mastery that you seek, we did get there. Like we did it. But, there's all this other stuff that is going to crowd around that you think you also have to do. And just so you know, you never have to do that. All you have to do is listen to this deep inner voice with yourself, the capital L love that wants to create through you. Listen to that. That all the mastery that you want to experience is going to come. Your dream is going to turn happy indeed. And there will be unhelpful stories. And those are the things that you will give up. It will feel like a betrayal, but it is not. In fact, this whole time has been the sacrifice. This whole time has been the betrayal. And so it's, I sort of described like what I've done in meditations of going back to myself and having that moment with this relaxed confidence of saying, I believe you, to my younger Jack, that you want to accomplish these things. I believe you. I trust, the determination you have, and it is incredible, but it is also misguided by a split mind. And coming back to those moments, looking at these moments, not just at the moments that I supposedly experience now in time, but, looking with Jesus, having the Holy Spirit with me, looking with love, I can go back and there's a wonderful, to mention Neville Goddard again, and my mom is a ceramicist, and so she'll probably get this metaphor if she hears this, but like, you can put the clay back on the wheel and reform it and use your hands, use love to get it to be the shape that is most aligned, and that's what I'm practicing. That's what the course helps me practice, is not to deny anything that happened in the past. I'm not going to sit here and deny that I had this experience of all the stuff in form and then that picture taken of me and then feeling shame about it. But now I can recognize the humor, because what a gift that moment was. That moment was such a gift. And I had more after that, but such a gift because that's what was able to reflect back to me the self-concept, whether we experience self-concepts in other people or in photos of ourselves, and say, oh my God, that's what I've been doing? Oh no, and then I can choose again. And there's something so beautiful about being able to choose again that, like, thank God we can choose again. Thank God that, the holy instant is always available to us. because now it's not just about me being grateful that now I can live in a way that more properly honors the love that I am and live from that, but I can go back to these misguided split mind parts of me from the quote past and forgive them, forgive those stories and say, my love, you were misguided, but it's okay because we're still here together. Um, so yeah, definitely, probably not the only forgiveness story I'll experience, but definitely the most impactful at this point in my 31 years in this body.
I have a question.
Yes,
Where was your father?
my at the time, my dad was, since this was like at midnight, my dad was asleep because he would go to sleep early. He modeled to me going to sleep early. And there would be times where I'd be going up the stairs to my bedroom. This was when I lived at my parents' house at like 5 in the morning, and he'd be walking down the stairs, and we'd have this moment of recognition, and he would look at me with just, like my dad, like even though neither of my parents are particularly religious or spiritual, but I would describe them that way. I have my own words that they taught me, um, a kind of spirituality, and my dad's is embodying unconditional love in form. Unfortunately, I think he's working on pointing that inward, but the way that he would look at me in those moments is the way that I go back and look at, young versions of myself now, which is like, my love, if only you could see yourself how I see you. Um, and him just wanting me to care for myself. Yeah. So, yeah,
I
it's
I
definitely
ask
important.
that because it feels like you've gone back to one part of the story and really focused um, on saying, "I'm sorry I broke the promise."
Mm,
And yet it wasn't a healthy promise to make.
yes.
Instead of going back a few steps further and even further back, because it's like a journey of fathering and mothering yourself, but
Yeah.
it was the part to go back to, as I hear it, if we're in narrative and form world,
Right.
um, is really the misperception that you blew it because you didn't do something on a first try.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
there is where it started. Not the promise was a kind of huge created progress, a promise that came out of a moment of shame
Hmm.
where the shame didn't need to be in the first place. It's like a little kid walking
Yeah.
who makes the first misstep, and if the parent's gonna go, "That's horrible," and the little kid's like, will never I will never make a misstep again. I will make
Right.
sure from this moment on." Like, I actually crawled around with, I never crawled. I went straight from being flat and using my elbows like a snake to
Huh.
move around and up and down stairs and everything, and then I walked, and that was it. Um, but what I'm saying is the part of you that wasn't kind ab to yourself about, "Oh, I blew this because I brought it public and I felt humiliated,"
Mm.
was where everything went amiss, where you suddenly had to make this strong, almost
Mhm.
manly statement
Mhm.
before you were a man, and
Mm.
then all of this happened to have you father yourself. Your mother took the picture to show you the picture of
Mm.
what your body had done. Your father, as you said, was the one who showed you he goes to sleep early.
Yeah.
You know, who are you modeling here? What are you modeling? And even and I know this from growing up Jewish and dealing with the, very almost well, not almost, like, kind of, paternal, I should say, and patriarchal in certain ways, language of the Course, very masculine language of the Course, to start accepting that was even part of your process of being
Mm.
able to do this more mature fathering of that child. So it's not only constantly saying to the inner child that you had, "Oh, I'm sorry I broke the promise, but this is the reason why," but then to go to a next step going, "That promise wasn't quite mature promise. And now I am here to guide us both and to give us over to an even deeper Father to show us a way that's healthy, because both of us were off course.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's helpful or meaningful, but
Oh
it's
my gosh.
what I was hearing in this story, that the forgiveness moment, it was like back further. And wherever that part of you came even younger, that you felt like if you didn't do this, you weren't good enough right away, off the bat, instead of the learning curve. The learning curve can be beautiful and not out of shame.
Yeah, thank you so much for saying that. Is, part of why conversation is so magnificent. I'm so grateful to you for not just seeing that, but for speaking that, because I completely agree. And it's interesting how we, the in some ways it feels like it's like I'm going, how is it, like we went down the ladder and now we, every step of the ladder the Holy Spirit's with us as we head back, and feels like what you're telling me is like, Jack, this is what I heard is the next step in the ladder. And it's interesting because I 100% agree with you. You're absolutely right. Like, there was no need for me to feel any shame at 15 years old, and yet it led to, like you said, sort of like a misguided promise. And I think there's a something that I'm learning as a course student is about how to um, meet these moments with love, and without like making the stories uh real, because they're not. So like kind of you pointed out, and I agree with this too, like in a way, by only going to where I was at when I made this misguided promise to myself, it is in a way to, and saying I'm sorry, it feels like I betrayed you, et cetera, et cetera. It starts to make that too real, where if I go back even further, then it's like, oh, now I see why that misguided promise commitment thing came up. It was in order to avoid experiencing that shame ever again. And sure enough, there was no need for me to feel that shame in that moment. And, that said, I am so grateful for the way it went anyway, because now music is this, and songwriting and writing is this incredible way to bring love into form for me. It's been a magnificent tool. And, it's sort of like if if I could have a regret, it would have been just showing more love. But I also don't have regrets because I'm so grateful for how things are and how things have turned out. But yeah, thanks, Tam, for saying that, because that, I feel like I completely agree that that's like the next step is going there, and then going even further, at that point, like, that kind of thing. So yeah, thank you.
And even, I mean, everything is perfect. We either believe it or we don't.
Yeah.
So even that happening was perfect for your path.
Yeah.
For sure. But if you're going to play in Storyland of going back and forgiving, and like in that way, you could also go, well, wait a second. That was even the creating of the promise was a betrayal to your true self. You never promised. You were fine. And then you go deeper and deeper, and wow, it never happened. Don't even have to tell the story. You were always fine. This was your path. This was perfect. It's all exactly what it needs to be like. But there are levels in the world of form that are very helpful to many of us to look at. To like, I keep calling it now, pull a string and see where it goes. And and the string you think is going in one direction, and then it totally goes in another. Oh my God, that's where it is. And it's like a maze. And as long as your intent is pulling the string towards God and yourself and love, it's hard to go wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Beautiful.
beautiful work, beautiful everything you're doing. It's really thank you so much for sharing.
Indeed.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
Well
Matt,
said,
what are your
Jack.
thoughts?
Well, I mean, I certainly related to kind of, it sounded like you couldn't do that initial rap, and what you did was fire up the efforting machine. Like,
Yeah.
I have to fire up this machine and I'm going to put it into overdrive. I don't care how much fuel it takes. This thing's going to be on 24/7. And it's like, it's as if uh, this effort, something external has to be kind of brought in to make you into this vision of the self you want to be. And I can certainly relate to that as kind of a, I guess, former bulldozer operator, and this saying that
Mm.
not literally, but just kind of like you have to push through, and I need to push through and make this happen. If I don't make it happen, it's not going to happen. And it's kind of take effort and grit and persistence and all this stuff that's just exhausting. And I could really feel that. And what a comfort to be able to turn the efforting machine off and just say, wow, that thing is overheated. Not turning that thing on again.
Yeah. Love that metaphor. That's yeah, 100%.
Well, I'm really curious about your answer to the next question here, Jack, because you kind of went through the spiritual buffet line
Yeah,
with you know
that's for
with
sure.
with what did you say, the Tao Te Ching and
Yep.
Or not Eckhart,
Oh,
Neville
certainly Eckhart Tolle
Eckhart
as well.
Tolle, Neville Goddard, and me too. I've gone through all these, and it's like, man, they're all helpful. They're all helpful. But when you get caught in an ego storm and you just can't seem to get back on track and feel recentered again, you can't melt in the way you want to. What do you do to get back on track? Any helpful practical tips?
I love this question. It's yeah, I've so appreciated when I've heard other answers too. And it's interesting because in one sense, I spend a lot of time in the room that I'm in right now in my studio slash office where I work remotely and all that. And I'm lucky because if that happens when I'm in here, I have all these sticky notes around my room. I have God knows you only now. I have take nothing personally. I have the separation never occurred. And any of these just point me, to listen to the Holy Spirit in the mind. Um, but I think the more, the answer that asks me to dig a little bit deeper is, when I'm out in the quote world and especially around folks that don't have a sense of any of this terminology. And if I was to say any of it to them, it would not land, they wouldn't hear the truth of it. Um, for me, that's when I get caught up in ego storms. It's when it feels like it's for me, it happens a lot of the time when it feels like I'm not being good enough, in a way, to point to the earlier what we talked about earlier of not showing up well enough. And a lot of the time in spiritual, as the holy ego starts to form and try to take control, it's like I'm not showing up good enough in love to be loving to this person and solve their problem, or something like that. Some storified way to do it. And for me, the best thing that I can remember that plays, it's almost like if it's like a tape recording, it's like there's an automatic play button gets pressed anytime the storm starts to get a little bit too hectic, which is like this like soft remembrance, feeling of presence of the Holy Spirit through the words of, usually it's something like, I need do nothing, or or to get, I'm trying to get as momentary and textured and tangible as I possibly can. It's almost like my face has this muscle memory where if something starts to get too hectic or stressful, or I'm caught in an ego storm and thinking too much or whatever it might be and identifying with the thoughts, the corners of my mouth start to not go into like a big smile, like I'm denying it, but a soft smile. Um, and in a way, it's like the Holy Spirit through the body, however we want to think of it, the muscle memory of how many times I have been able to release from the ego storm, that muscle memory comes back, and it's like a play button gets hit, and it's like now there's just like how there's the ego scripts, there's like this Holy Spirit script, and it plays, and it's hard to say like what do I do, because it feels like I am carried off by grace out of or sort of released from it, and it kind of relieves pressure, to talk in David R. Hawkins terms, the surrender, letting go, listening to the Holy Spirit, whatever we want to call it. It's like this release of pressure. The closest I could get, the most specific I could get, is that it happens on its own. But I think it's this split second remembering that happens, and then what I do, I would say, is I take Jesus's hand. I take the love's hand. I take the capital S self's hand, and I say, "Oh, thank you again. I almost got trapped in that quicksand." Whew! And then and it's sort of like almost like a reflex. Feel free to ask me to clarify, because I feel like I was trying to get as specific as I could, but yeah,
I got it.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, actually, I think one of my favorite things you said in this was the word storified. I like that word of, to storify the way you do it. But yes, no. I think that we understand in course terminology exactly what you said. You remember in a split second of that remembering, and the taking of the hand that knows where to bring you back, and releasing into that it's a fabulous reflex. I mean, we talk a lot about how it's, using the course principles is like creating, muscles. It's practicing, and then and you're just showing how that muscle that you build then has a muscle memory that can, which is a next step, as once the muscle's made, it knows what to do.
Yeah. And Course in Miracles terminology too is you can't see two worlds. So you're saying, which one do I want to see? Reconditioning, yeah, the pattern.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Jack, it's now time. You know what's coming.
I know.
What is your favorite comfort food?
Oh, I was just going to replace it with something totally different for you.
Oh, no. Damn, what are you doing?
I was being devilish. Excuse me.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. Comfort food.
Yes. There are so many, of course. All of us have so many, I'm sure, that we could list. But there is one that has been a staple for me. And it's partially because it's something that I got from my parents growing up. And it is relatively simple, I would say, but it is something that I just always come back to, which is vanilla ice cream, where you take the carton out of the freezer for a few minutes so it melts just enough where it's still formed, but it's slightly melted just a little. And then you add a scoop or two or three of peanut butter to it. Those together, it's just, for me, it's just like this magical experience. And I came to learn later on that the fat in the peanut butter helps to sort of balance out the blood sugar spike of the ice cream. So all this time I enjoy it like as these taste sort of experience, and texture experience, but it's also something that my body appreciates, that the blood sugar spike isn't as high when the peanut butter's there. So yeah, vanilla ice cream and peanut butter, I will have that pretty much any time of any day if you offer it to me.
Call that the Jack Gelato, I think.
Sure, yeah, I'll take it.
You're more patient than I. I'll just microwave the carton.
Oh yeah. Don't get me wrong. I've done that too for sure. But
just 10 to 20 seconds, a little microwave right to it. And then what I've done in that vein is take vanilla ice cream, put in, I prefer almond butter usually to peanut butter, and swirl in almond butter with a little bit of honey.
Ooh, I gotta try that with honey. That sounds good.
It's really good.
So is this equal ratio, Jack? Equal ratio ice cream to peanut butter?
I would say it is probably on average, I would say it's 3/4 ice cream and 1/4 peanut butter.
Mm.
But I'll admit, sometimes I get halfway through the bowl and then I add another scoop of peanut butter. Or if I'm going through one of those pints, then it's like I've got peanut butter on top, and then as I get halfway down, then I got to add another peanut butter. Like with Halo Top ice cream, I love doing that because those are so light. And yeah, so it depends. The strategy is different depending on the moment.
What is Halo Top?
So Halo Top, it's a ice cream brand where it's like you're meant to like, you know, I've eaten pints of all kinds of ice cream in one sitting easily, but this one it's like the nutrition facts of it are meant to be that you would eat a whole pint in one sitting because it's like 300 calories in a pint because there's a lot less sugar. They use a little bit of stevia. There's a little more protein than usual. And it used to be like kind of not good, you know, like really airy and too icy. But now they've found a way, especially the vanilla and the strawberry and probably the chocolate. I haven't tried the chocolate, but they're so much creamier. And I'm like, oh, well, this totally hits the spot. I'll take this one. And then I could have a little extra peanut butter with it. And yeah, it's good. I definitely recommend it for sure.
You lost me though. It's stevia. I'm so bad.
Yeah. Well, it's not only stevia. Don't worry. It's not only
just
stevia.
that stevia comes through and leaves that taste in my mouth.
I get it. I can't
go for it.
Yeah. I don't notice it in Halo Top so much because they still use a lot of sugar, like regular sugar.
That's bizarre.
Yeah.
And he's drowning in a sea of peanut butter, Tam.
Well, yeah, no, I get that. But okay, I'm going to try it. But that's so interesting that they use sugar and stevia.
Yeah.
I like how they embrace the idea that you really deep down want to eat the whole container.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm on board with this company's message.
Have you had it, Matt?
I've never had it, no.
Okay, we have to figure out where we get this.
Yeah, we're intrigued.
It's worth at least one try.
Yeah, we're going to double back on this one with you.
Sounds good. Yeah. Sounds good.
Well, Jack, thanks so much for coming on Miracle Voices and sharing your miracle voice. Is there anywhere you want to point people or just leave it there?
Oh, man. Well, if you're curious where my music has ended up, my artist name is Jack in the Way, all one word, JACKINTHEWAY. But other than that, I would just, if you find any of what we've talked about helpful, interesting, something you want to look more into, I just point you to the Foundation for Inner Peace. Just check out the course.
Well said.
Just go back to the course. If you're a 20-year course student, I'm pointing you to the Foundation. Go to the course.
I also want to say that Jack has been a volunteer with us and now working little part-time other stuff with us. And just do you want to hear more of? If you want to hear more of him, we want to have more of him on webinars and other places. We're doing the grooming.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
We don't groom. We just go be course. May the course be with you.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go.
That's a good one.
So, anyway, really appreciate it. And I appreciate this opportunity to get to know you better. So
yeah,
me too. And what a great comfort food, Jack, most importantly.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, definitely has us going out and buying something new.
Yeah.
Well, very well done, Jack. Have a great rest of the spring, and we hope to chat with you soon.
Thank you both so much. Appreciate it. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for listening today. Please subscribe to Miracle Voices by hitting the subscribe button on your podcast app. If you are enjoying these conversations, please consider leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or whatever podcast app you use. And lastly, please visit us at miraclevoices.org and join our newsletter so we can stay connected. Until the next podcast, I want to leave you with my favorite course quote: "When you want only love, you will see nothing else."